Hi guys, we're going to continue to read the book of Genesis. We want to get all the way down to chapter 50 so we can start reading about the New Testament. And that's the New Testament is where I might read to you a part of the Bible that show the heritage of Jesus and his lineage. But the people that I'm reading about, he came from their line. The people I'm reading about here, he came from all the line of Abraham. So, Abraham, Noah was the forefather of Abraham and his lineage. And then now Abraham was the father of Isaac. And now Isaac is the father of Jacob and Esau. But Isaac died. So there's like going down the line of who the children of the children are, but they all were children of promise. The Lord swore to them that he would be with them, and he would help them with everything in their lives. And sometimes they didn't even go to him for counsel, the ones that's further down the line. But Abraham and Sarah, they always went to the Lord. But like you see Jacob, it was years before he had conference with the Lord, about 20 years or so while he was working for his wife. But after he got through working off things, he went back and he started back conferencing with the Lord. So but because of the prayers of Abraham, because of the prayers of Isaac, because of them constantly saying, Lord, protect my seed, protect my offspring, protect my land, keeping their things covered with God. God promised them, I'm going to watch over your seed in the earth, which is their child, their offspring. I'm going to watch over your seed. I'm going to watch over everything they do. And so when they didn't go back to conference with the Lord, the seed, like Jacob or whatever, he didn't go back for some years. The Lord was still there because of the prayers of the forefathers. Isn't that something? And you often wonder, does prayer work? Well, your family member may have prayed for you, your mother, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, and they may have gone on. Guess what? Those prayers are still working for you, that they constantly put them prayers for you. They're still working. That's why the song said, I'm so glad that somebody prayed for me. You can be in some place getting ready to be harmed, but because of the prayers of somebody, the angel's going to keep you covered. The angels are there for you. Now we are here. Joseph tested by adversity. We in 39. Now in 38, Joseph was telling his brothers, he had a dream about the baby sheep and the baby cows, that one of his cows had high authority, and the one cow was obscene to him or doing something to the other one that wasn't right. And he said, I had a dream about this, right? And so the brothers devised a plan. His brothers, they had to go out there and herd the flock, get the cattle and all of that, herd it and get them to pasture for the night. Find a place for them to sleep down so they could eat and have water for the night. So he said, he had told them about the dream, right? So he went out there. His father said, go check on them and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. He went to check on him, and they devised a scheme to kill him. His older brother, Reuben, he said, no, let's not have our brother's blood on our hand. Let's just throw him over there in a hole somewhere, so that he won't be killed. So here we are. We at 39. Joseph tested by adversity. This is Genesis 39. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer. What happened was Joseph was thrown into the well, a dry well with no water, nothing in it. And some Midianites came by, and they heard him hollering for help to get out the well. They pulled him out. He didn't have on anything. He was naked. Throw him down there with no clothes on. They said, well, he must be a slave. Let's sell him. So they went and sold him into Egypt for money. And they got so many pieces of silver for him. And he ended up being a slave in Egypt. You know, Reuben went back to the well to see if he was in there, because Reuben said, let me go get my brother. You know, let me go see if he down here in the well. He was gone. He wasn't even in the well. He had been sold to Egypt as a slave. Okay, so here's 39. Joseph was brought down to Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. An Egyptian bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. So he was sold, and they brought him down as a slave to the Egyptian master. And his master saw the Lord was with him, and the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hands. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house and all that he had. And he put everything into Joseph's hands. And it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer in his house and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. Joseph was blessed. The Lord was upon Joseph because of his father, Jacob. His father constantly kept blessings over him, working with God. He said, I want you to bless my son, And so he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a godly person and well favored. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. Looked at Joseph. Joseph got older now, Because, when he was thrown in the well about 17. So now he growing up, he a young man about in his 20s. The master's wife cast her eyes upon him. She said, lie with me. Come to bed. But he refused, and he said unto his master's wife, behold, my master would not what is with me in this house, and he hath committed all he hath to my hand. I'm the overseer. In other words, my master will not like that. And there is none greater in this house than I am. That's what Joseph said. There is none greater, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee. He kept nothing in the house back from me but his wife. That's the one thing he said you can't touch. But you can touch anything in the house because you're in charge of it, right? He said, and he telling her, he said, my master did not keep nothing from me, but he did keep you from me. He kept you from me. he letting her know, I am not to touch you. I'm not to touch you. She's protected by her husband, right? And so there is none greater. And he said he had kept nothing from me but thee, nothing but you. And then he said, because you are his wife, thou art his wife. And he said, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her or to be with her. So he determined, I'm not going to go when she called me. I'm going to stay away from her. He determined, she would come every day. Tell Joseph to come here. I want to speak with him. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there. Nobody was in the house. And she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got out. Every time he come around, she kept saying, come go to bed with me. So Joseph ran out and she grabbed his clothes. She grabbed a piece of his clothing. And it came to pass when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house and spake unto them, saying, see, he hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me. And I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me. And he fled and got out. And he got out. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. Till her husband walked in. She kept Joseph's clothing. He should have took his clothing. He should have made sure he got everything on when he ran out. Okay. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he lifted his garment with me. He left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph, and shewed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. Amen. Everywhere he went, he was in charge. So the people that watched over the prison, they said, we're going to put you in charge of the prison. Everywhere he went, he was in charge. So the keeper of the prison said, the Lord has favor on you. You're going to be in charge here. And so the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand. He said, I ain't got to worry about that because I got you. And because the Lord was with him, that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. So everything Joseph did in the prison, he was in charge of all the men and everything. The prison guard said, I'm going to put everything in your hand. He ain't worry about it. And everything he did in the prison was prosperous. Amen. See, God will put you in charge when He working with you. Now we're down here to 40. And it came to pass after these things that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers and against the chief of the bakers. He was upset with the chief baker and the chief butler. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard, into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captains of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued a season in ward. They continued throughout the season in prison. After they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream. The butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison, and Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his lord's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sadly today? And they said unto him, they said, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. So he wanted to know their dream. He said the interpretation of a dream has to do with the Lord. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, In my dream, behold, a vine was before me, and in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head, and restore thee unto thy place, and thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand, after the former manner when thou wast his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and shew kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen away out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also have I done nothing, that they should put me into the dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets of my bread. He was a baker. He said, I had 3 baskets of bread. And in the uppermost basket there was of all manner of baked meat for Pharaoh. And the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my hand. And Joseph answered and said, This is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree. He said, you're going to be hung, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off thee. Amen. And it came to pass the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants. And he lifted up the head of the chief butler, of the chief baker among his servants. He brought them out of the prison when he made this feast. And he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again. And he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand, the cup of grapes. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgot about him. Joseph told him, he said, when you come back into your butlership, remember to mention me. And so the other one was hanged. Now, let me see what happened. Why was the baker hanged? You know, normally when you're thrown into prison, they're waiting for you to come up to see if what you did was true or not. You know how you go to prison and you're waiting for your judge, for the day for you to come out, and the judge to tell what your conviction is. And sometimes they take you before a court of people. This is in real life. In the court of people, they have to determine if you are true or false based on what you did, your deeds, you know. So when they got into Pharaoh's prison, they waiting for their day of arraignment to come to see what's true. So I guess the baker, whatever he did, it was true because he was hanged. So it said, let me see what it said about what their sins were. Joseph's role is to act as a servant to these men. In the course of serving them, he also interprets some dreams for them. He recognizes that their dreams are revelations from God and invites the 2 prisoners to relate their dreams to him. He is careful, however, to give God the glory for his interpretive gift. One had a positive outcome in his translation. Joseph is credited with saying that the baker's head would be lifted up, but that it actually a reference to a hanging. He said your head will be lifted up, but he said it's referring to a hanging. The baker would not simply suffer execution, but his corpse would be impaled and publicly exposed. You know, the baker said, in my basket, the birds came down in the basket to eat what I had. The birds. When birds eat something, it's normally dead. They don't eat something alive. So that's why he said, your head lifted up. He said, you're going to be hanged. So Joseph had a gift where he could interpret what the dreams meant. So the dream of Pharaoh, this is in Genesis 41. I'm going to try to get through this quick without having to restart. In Genesis 41, it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he dreamed a dream. He stood by the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored, keen and fat-flushed, and they fed in a meadow. kind, the fat flesh, these are cows. 7 well-fed fat cows. They fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kind, 7 other keen or kine, I forget what they call it, came up. I don't know if it's sheep or cows. They came up after them out of the river. And they were ill-favored and lean-fleshed. They were skinny. And they stood by the other fat-fleshed ones upon the brink of the river. We had 7 fat ones and 7 skinny ones. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kind, they did eat up 7 well-favored and fat kind. So Pharaoh woke. So the skinny ones, they ate the fat ones up. They ate the fat cows up. And then Pharaoh woke up. He said the 7 fat ones ate the 7 skinny ones. 7 skinny ones ate the 7 fat ones. And he slept and dreamed a second time, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. 7 good ears of corn and 7 bad ears of corn. And behold, 7 thin ears blasted with the east. Wind sprang up after them, 7 bad ears, okay? And the 7 thin ears of corn devoured the 7 good ears of corn that had full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled. And he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. He said, Pharaoh was wroth with his servant, and put him in the ward of the captain's guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, and we both dreamed a dream. And he said, we dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was with us a young man, a Hebrew servant, to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted it to us, so it was me he restored unto my office, and him he hanged. And so Joseph, exhortation in Egypt. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself, and changed his clothing, his raiment, and into Pharaoh he went. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard saying thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me, sir. He said, God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. So whatever Joseph did, he did it unto God. He said, this is not what I do. He said, the Lord have given me this gift. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, in my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kind, fat-fleshed, and well-favored. And they fed in the meadow. And behold, 7 other kind came up after them. They were poor and very ill-favored, very skinny and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kind did eat up the first 7 fat ones. He said that the little skinny ones, they ate the fat ones up. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them. They eat them so fast, but they were still ill-favored as the beginning. So I awoke. He said he ate the skinny cows ate the fat cows, and they were still skinny when they ate them. And then he said, I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears of corn came up on one stalk, full and good, beautiful 7 ears of corn. And behold, 7 ears withered, thin, blasted by the east wind, sprung up after them. And then he said, and the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears of corn. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, the dream of Pharaoh is one. He said God had showed Pharaoh that he is about what he is about to do. He said the 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. He said the dream is one. He said, and the 7 thin and ill-favored kind that came up after them are 7 years, and 7 empty years. He said 7 empty years. The east wind blasted shall be 7 years of famine. So he told him 2 sevens, and then the third 7, and the fourth 7, he said, is the east wind, which is bringing you famine. And he said, this is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land, 7 years of unriddled plenty. And then there arise after them 7 years of famine. All the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. Amen. So he said, you're going to have 7 good years. And he said, after that, when the famine comes, he said, it's going to be so great. It's going to consume everything that was good. Amen. And then he said, and the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that, the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Amen. He said, you had this dream twice. You dreamed it twice in 2 different ways. He said, when you dream something twice, the Lord will bring it to pass, and it's going to happen shortly. Now, therefore, let Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7 plenteous years, and let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up corn under the hand of Pharaoh, and let them keep food in the cities. And the food shall be for store to the land against 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the things was good in the eyes of Pharaoh. So, here's Joseph. Joseph said, let me tell you what to do. Joseph said, it's so dry in here. He said, listen, take 1/5 of everything in the good years, corn, cattle, cows, sheep, whatever. He said, lay it up and save it back. Save it back. Don't touch it. And he said, when you take this 5th portion of everything that's good, you're going to use it when everything go bad. That's what he told him. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God hath shewed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. He said, thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring and off his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put gold chains about his neck. And he made him to ride in the 2nd chariot which he had. And they cried before him, bow thy knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his head or foot in all the land of Egypt. Amen. He put him in charge. He said, you know what's going to happen in this land? God is talking to you and speaking to you. He couldn't hear from God. He wasn't right. He said, I want you to be in charge. And that's what happened. So down here, Joseph receives a gentle bride. We got to stop because we're on 30 minutes. Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zavnath Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. So what he did, he said, I'm going to give Joseph a wife, keep him company when he go in at night. So he gave Joseph the prince's wife. He said, I want you to take a highly ranked wife by your side. He gave that to her for him to go in. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh. He had got up to 30 years old, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all of the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth by handfuls, bundles, and he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land, and laid up the food in the cities. He laid it up, he stored it up. The food of the field, which was round about every city, he laid it up in the same. Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea. He gathered so much corn, he gathered the corn up very much until he left numbering, for it was without number. He gathered so much corn you couldn't count the number. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh, for God, said he, hath made me forget all of my toil and all my father's house. His son was named Manasseh because he forgot where he came from. And the name of the second son called he Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. And the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended, and the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the dearth was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. There was bread where they were. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you, do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all countries came into Egypt to Joseph to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all lands. There was no food anywhere. They had to go to Egypt to get the food. Now we're going to stop right here. The next we pick up on chapter 42 of Genesis. We almost get to the end. Take a break.